right, so we did thunderstorms and we did tornadoes yesterday. Today we're going to be talking about hurricanes and blizzards. Remember, you have to also know what to do in case of that emergency, right? Every time, I should say pretty much the best answer every time that you have one of these severe weather emergencies is find shelter. Okay? If you give the generic answer of find shelter as one of the two, you should be fine. Okay? Shelter for each one of them is going to be different, right? Tornadoes, shelter was underground. Thunderstorms just meant go into your house or your apartment or, into a store, right? Hurricanes are going to be different, right? I'm going to make a lot of comparisons to hurricanes and tornadoes throughout this entire thing, right? And the reason for it is because it looks the same, but where tornadoes pop up and go away very quickly, hurricanes develop, okay? Specifically, they develop in warm water, okay? They are going to develop in warm water areas. On this map, you see where the orange is? Okay? That is the places where tropical storms will form. You don't just go from nothing to a hurricane. You have to have a tropical storm that forms first. So you have basically a giant cloud, a giant thunder cloud, I should say, or thunderstorm cloud on the water that forms. But notice where they are forming. They are forming right by the equator. Why? Because that's where the warmest water is going to be. Then those white arrows that you see here, okay, those are also the path in which the hurricanes can take here. They are following, if you look at your reference table, right, so if we go back to our reference table here, right, and we go back to page 4, taking some time, right? They are following the warm currents from the equator on page 4, okay? So hurricanes are going to follow the warm currents in the oceans, okay? Because in general, hurricanes will stick with warm water. Warm water is the fuel for a hurricane. The longer it sits in that warm water, the stronger the hurricane will become. Okay? That's really important that you know that. Okay? Warm water is going to fuel a hurricane. It's going to make it stronger. That's why they always say during hurricane season, which starts the end of July-ish, I believe it goes through October, okay? They will say if the hurricane is squatting in the water, it's just picking up more fuel, right? Once it makes landfall, it should slow down. But the problem that we've been having over the last couple of years is, yes, it does hit the islands down here, but, right, it immediately goes back into the warm water. So it picks up speed again. The hurricane that happened a couple of years ago in Texas first hit the Dominican, first hit Puerto Rico, first hit the islands here, picked up more speed, and then came back up and hit Texas. Okay? So warm water is going to be what helps to create these hurricanes. So the hurricane starts the same way that a cloud forms, but instead of being up in the atmosphere, it's now on the water, right? So you start off with that warm, moist air rising up, right? Spreading apart, cooling down, forming a cloud, all right? And it's going to happen over and over and over again until you get that buildup upon buildup upon buildup upon buildup over and over and over and over again till you get this thundercloud. That thundercloud then starts to rotate. Okay? And it's because of the rotation of the earth. So it's a natural occurrence that that's going to happen. okay? Then you still have those updrafts, right, from more clouds or more water being brought up at the same time that you have these blue lines, those blue downdrafts, into what's known as the eye of the storm. Okay, and again, it's going to follow the path of the coast. Okay, so let's see if they'll let me click that. Nope. Okay. This picture that's going to come up is great because it shows you a little bit of everything. It's a better picture than the last one I showed you, but I can't save it, unfortunately. Okay, so, right, here we have those updrafts of the warm, moist water being pulled up, or warm, moist air being pulled up. You have that rotation in the middle. Notice there's a blank section in the middle. That's called the eye of the storm. Okay? Depending on how strong the hurricane is, you can actually, you'll start to see more and more damage. So let's watch what happens.
Crispy, juicy, tender, and
Besides
spicy.
commercials.
Ah, very spicy. New crispy chicken sandwich.
Cyclone, typhoon, hurricane. All of these names are used around the world to describe the most powerful storm known to man. Hurricanes are unpredictable, but scientists have a thorough understanding of how hurricanes form and sustain their power. In the Atlantic Ocean, hurricane season peaks during the late summer months when tropical waters are the warmest. Hurricanes.
You might want to write that down, guys. Remember, you're writing stuff down as we watch the videos. The videos are not just for you to watch, even though they're entertaining. Okay. That average, we beat that average by a lot last year. The last time that, once you run out of the 26 letters in the alphabet, you go into the Greek alphabet. I think last year we went the furthest we've ever gone, right? Because it's alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, zeta, eta, theta, right? I think I want to find out real quick while you guys are writing that, while you guys are watching this, how far we actually went with the names. But the names are always named after the first letter of the alphabet, right? A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all the way through Z. Once you hit Z, then you go into the Greek alphabet. We had that many tropical storms and that many hurricanes last year. Okay? The average is 6.4. We went over that.
Are the warmest. Hurricanes form from a cluster of thunderstorms that suck up the warm, moist air and move it high into Earth's atmosphere. The warm air is then converted into energy that powers the hurricane's circular winds. These winds spin around a low-pressure center called the eye, which can provide a 20 to 30-mile radius of eerie calm.
Okay, so that eye in the center is kind of like the calmness. Right? I've been in the eye. I will tell you guys what it's like after this is over. Okay? Last year, we had 30 named storms and 12 landfalling storms. So 30 tropical storms / hurricanes, and 12 of them actually hit land.
Calm. Encircling it is the eye wall, a towering ring of clouds with some of the fastest wind speeds of the hurricane. Surrounding the eye wall are curved bands of clouds, the rain bands, often tens of miles wide, releasing sheets of rain and sometimes tornadoes. When a tropical storm's winds reach at least 74 miles per hour, it becomes a hurricane. The hurricane then receives a category ranking of 1 to 5 on the Saffir-Simpson scale, based on its wind speed and potential damage. But wind speed isn't always the most dangerous component when hurricanes come near land. It's storm surge. Storm surge is caused when winds from an approaching hurricane push water towards the shoreline up to 20 feet above sea level and can extend 100 miles.
Okay? Storm surge is the most dangerous part of a hurricane. Yes, we do have wind. Yes, we do have rain. The storm surge is actually where most people die. Okay? Most people die in a hurricane because of the water that is brought in by that hurricane. Okay? Now, when we say storm surge, as you can see, it's when the hurricane pushes the water in, okay? And when it pushes that water in, you cause flooding, you cause people who think that their car can still drive through it, and then they get stuck. People end up having to go to the roofs of their houses. I did hear a story about how during Sandy, one person had watched as their husband got sucked out of their house because the water came in and pulled them out. Okay, these are all things that happen during hurricanes.
90% of all hurricane deaths are the result of storm surge. While hurricanes can cause mass devastation, just like other natural disasters, they serve a higher purpose within the global ecosystem. Hurricanes help regulate our climate by moving heat energy from the equator to the poles, keeping the Earth's temperature stable.
So this is a natural form of basically climate change, right? It's basically nature's way of regulating the core temperature of the Earth. By having those hurricanes start at the equator and move away from there, it takes that heat with it, right? It depends on which way you're going, but it's going to take that heat away from the equator and bring it to other places on the Earth. Okay, so hurricanes will actually regulate the temperature of the Earth, or it helps to regulate the temperature of the Earth. So this is nature's way of doing it. Your way of doing it is sweating. Nature's way is hurricanes. Come on.
Over time, science has helped us to better understand hurricanes and predict their paths, saving lives through early warning systems and helping us build better infrastructure to protect our cities. The more we study these complex storms, the better we can prepare for them and minimize their impact on human lives.
How crazy is that? That hole in the center, that's the eye of that storm. Okay? Notice how in the eye of the storm, nothing is happening that you can see, right? There's no real cloud cover in the middle. There's really no rain that's happening. There's really not a lot of wind. It is the creepiest thing that I have ever been a part of. Okay, so, like I said, I have been in the eye of a storm before. It is very, very, very creepy, okay? Why is it creepy? Well, it's creepy because when I was growing up, I was in South Carolina 3 to 4 times a year, okay? And we were there we go during summer at the peak of hurricane season in August, okay? And we were there, and I remember standing on the beach with my dad, and you could actually look out and see there was a huge storm that was just about to hit Florida. It was coming in, but you could actually see the storm. We ended up getting the remnants of that storm, and it wasn't so bad. It was terrible thunderstorms. We got the outer bands of the storm. There was another time I was down there, and a hurricane was hitting us, but it was like a Category 1. With a Category 1, you get mostly wind and rain and thunder and lightning. Not gonna do so much damage that you have to worry about evacuation. Once you get to like Category 3, then you want to start to think about evacuating. This storm was maybe a Category 1. So of course, we're inside all day because it's doom and gloom outside, it's thundering, it's lightning. Out of nowhere, the sun starts shining so brightly that my brother and I ran outside. And we're like, this is so cool. We're like looking around, we're like, the storm's over. And my dad goes, it's not over. We go, what are you talking about? He goes, no, this is the eye of the storm that is passing over us. eye of the storm, he goes, look behind you. So we just did one of those like slow motions and look behind us. Behind us, there was a giant black cloud. And within an hour, it was doom and gloom all over again. It was thundering, it was lightning, it was crazy. Why? Because we get hit twice. If the eye of the storm is going to pass over you, you get hit by all of the stuff in the front and then all of the stuff in the back. So you get hit by that storm twice with a little bit of lull in between. Okay? That's why it's so creepy, because you go outside and you're like, oh, this is perfectly fine. And then all of a sudden you see it coming. It's like, nope, not perfectly fine. You need to go inside. Okay, so there are a couple of rules with hurricanes. The first one is that in order to be a hurricane, you need to be rotating. And specifically, you need to have rotating bands of thunderstorms. Okay? The second rule is you have that windless eye in the center, that very creepy moment where you think everything is fine, but it's really not. Okay? And the third one is you need a minimum sustained wind of 74 miles per hour. Okay? In order to be categorized as a hurricane, you need winds of minimum of 74 miles per hour. And it needs to be sustained. What does that mean? It needs to be a constant of at least 74 miles per hour. If you hit 74 and then go back down to 73, you're not a hurricane. You have to be at least 74, 74, 74, 80, 74, 70, okay? Has to be at least 74 for a good chunk of time, okay? Otherwise, you get knocked down to what's known as a tropical storm, okay? You could still have the rotating band. You can still have the eye, but can be considered a tropical storm because of the fact that your winds are only at less than 74 miles per hour. That's what happened with Sandy. By the time Superstorm Sandy hit us, their winds went down. But what really messed up New York and New Jersey wasn't the hurricane itself, wasn't the storm itself. It was the fact that it was a new moon, right? And it was at high tide, which meant even more water was being pulled in. So the storm surge from that storm was incredible. All right? So here we have a hurricane, okay? You can see those pink updrafts, right? You can see in the middle that rotating mesocyclone, right, that eye. And then also what you see are those downdrafts. Those downdrafts are bringing cool, dry air down, which is pushing the rain down at the same time. That warm air is rising up. That warm, moist air is rising up. So it's both at the same time. Okay? Here we have a picture of a very large storm. Okay? Just like tornadoes, just because it's a large storm does not necessarily mean that it's going to be stronger. Okay? Here's another storm over here. All right? How many storms do you see here? 3? Agree or disagree, guys? Are there 3 here? Guys at home, how many storms do you see?
3.
Right? There's 3. There's also, if you look right next to this middle storm, there's a couple islands right there that are about to get hit by that hurricane. Okay? You can see the eye. These are satellite images, right? You can see the eye of the storm coming. Okay? So, like I said before, hurricanes and tornadoes have a lot in common. Okay? Hurricanes or tornadoes have just the destructive wind and some rain, right? With hurricanes, it's the wind, the rain, and the water. The water is what ends up killing people, or killing 90% of people who are in hurricanes. This is how you categorize it, and you guys need to know these. Okay? This is how you categorize a hurricane. Notice there is no category 0. When we did tornadoes started with an EF0 and went to an EF5. Okay? That does not happen with a hurricane. If it is a category 0, quote unquote, it is a tropical storm. So hurricanes are based on the wind speed. They're categorized based on the wind speed, which then will tell us how much damage will be done. Okay? Like I was saying before, once you hit a category 3, that's when the news media starts to say to you, you need to evacuate. Okay? It's highly suggested that you evacuate. Okay? When it gets to 3, there's really not a lot of help that can come to you. Okay? Like I was saying before, forgot about this story. When Sandy hit, my nan was living by herself. She had a tenant behind her, but her house was more of like a high ranch. It went up a level, and then it had 2 floors. Well, we had told her and my aunt that, there's going to come a point where none of us can come get you. You need to evacuate. They're telling you guys you're in Cedarhurst, you're right next to the water, you flood normally during a thunderstorm. You're going to flood back. But there's going to come a point where nobody can come get you because none of us own a boat. Okay? Well, all of a sudden, she starts calling everybody, come get me. Couldn't come get her. Because there was already flooding outside, and you couldn't drive in that. Like we said, nobody owned a boat, and to go from where my parents were in Rockville Center to Cedarhurst, there was no way. So, all of a sudden, she gets a bang on her door. Her tenant, the house had already flooded so much, almost to the 2nd floor. When he came in the house, okay, they started hearing splashing from her basement. Her basement, it was like our 1st floor, the water had already risen up to almost hit the main floor of the house. That's how much water came in with Sandy. Question.
Like 8 feet came in my grandma's house in the basement.
Yeah, where was she?
Howard Beach.
Yeah, Howard Beach got really flooded. For those of you guys at home who didn't hear it, Brian was saying 8 feet of water came into his grandma's basement. My brother was in Long Beach. He was there at the beginning of the storm, and then he was walking his dog, and he turned around and was like, yeah, we're leaving, because Long Beach and Rockaway, if you look at where they are, they have the ocean on one side, and they have the bay on the other, right? So they got hit on both sides and flooded. On both sides. That's why someone yesterday was saying, is that why Long Beach, you now have to have your house up higher? Yes. Because now you had 2 hurricanes in 2 summers that did extensive damage to all of those houses. In order to keep your house insurance, you now had to lift the house up for the most part.
Yeah, I'm picking up basement.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what does a category 5 hurricane look like?
Google image. Category 5 hurricane. Damage is what you should do. All right, so in this case, remember we were just talking about storm surge? When we cleaned out, and Brian, probably when you cleaned out your grandma's basement, right, it had a lot of dirt, but it wasn't dirt. It was the sand and the grit that it brought in. The water brought in all of this stuff, right? There's a lot of flooding. This is a roof we realized yesterday, right here. That's the top of somebody's house, right? This one, I love this picture. Just because that would be like my grandpa walking through the water. Because like I said, I don't really care, we're walking. Okay? Do not drive through high water. I don't care if you have an SUV. I've seen my fair share of SUVs get stuck. Okay? It's not fun. Right? What happens is it gets to that point of no return where you say, we cannot come get you. So people decide to get in their cars and try and drive. Well, when they get in their cars and try and drive, what happens is they get stuck. And then the water starts to rise up. And then they get on the roof of their cars and they wait for someone, but most of the time people can't come out at that point.
So if someone had to get out and, like, do you think they'd be better off, like, walking there were times to drive.
The problem is that if you are already in the storm and you start to walk, remember, there's also those winds that come in. The winds, as you can see, were knocking down tree branches. They're knocking down electrical poles. They're knocking down a lot of stuff that if you're walking could fall on you. You know, if all of a sudden the storm surge, because it moves quickly. That storm surge comes in super quick, right? That means you could drown. You can get pulled under. There was one woman who was inside of her car and she tried to get out of her car, but then got pulled by the water into the sewer and drowned. So there's a lot of stuff that could happen. The best thing for you to do if it hits a category 3 and they suggest you evacuate. Don't hang around. You know, you don't want to stay there. They give you enough time or enough warning. With hurricanes, it's completely different than tornadoes in the fact that you do have a warning. Okay, there is a warning system. So when it comes to hurricanes, you should evacuate, especially if you get to a category 3. Okay, you're gonna want to board up your windows, board up your doors, get sandbags for in front of you so that when that storm surge does come in, you can try to prevent the flooding from happening. Let's see what else. You can, in case of a hurricane, again, you want to have bottled water. Again, you want to have a safety kit, fresh batteries, flashlight, a wind-up radio, stuff so that you can stay in communication. Question.
Why is it that some houses, like I know my house, only like the power went out? Like I didn't get flooded.
Where were you in Howard Beach too?
No, I didn't get flooded.
So, okay, that's right. So it depends on where you are in the location, like distance-wise to water. You know, Howard Beach is very close to water. So your grandma probably at one point had to pay flood insurance for that reason. Like Cedarhurst, the same thing. They're very close to water. They had to pay flood insurance. But some people only lost power, and you lost power for days. The reason why after Superstorm Sandy we had the issue with gasoline was because you couldn't get the trucks in. We couldn't replenish all of the gas stations. People were driving to Jersey to fill up gas tanks and gas canisters and bringing them back. They had the Halloween party here, the senior Halloween dance. And I remember it was right after they did the bathrooms downstairs. They had me on bathroom duty, so I was in there talking to some girls, and one girl was like, yeah, people are fighting over canisters at my dad's shop. And I go, where does your dad work? And she's like, oh, he owns the shop in, I forgot where it was. She goes, do you need one? And I'm like, yes. She goes, okay, well, she goes, I'll write your name down, Miss G. I'll tell him you're coming tomorrow. He'll put 2 to the side. That is the only reason I got gas. Because I was able to literally walk to gas stations and fill it up that way. And thank God I work here. All right, so let's go to a little bit more fun stuff. Blizzards. We have not really had a blizzard this year. Okay? Blizzards, you need to have a wind speed of 35 miles per hour or greater. Okay? In order to be considered a blizzard. So here's something. You need snow. All right? And usually with blizzards, the snow is coming hard, it's coming fast. It is going from like 0 to an inch in less than an hour. Okay? So you need a ton of snow. Okay, in case you don't know what a blizzard is, that's what a blizzard looks like. Okay, a couple years ago, there was actually a squall. A squall is a very quick-moving storm, but it was a quick-moving snowstorm that created a whiteout outside where you could not see. I think visibility was a foot. I remember looking outside my window, and I couldn't see to my front door from my window. That's how crazy fast the snow was coming through. Mr. G was coming home with the kids and got stuck on the LIE. He had to pull over because it came down so hard so fast and he couldn't see the car in front of him. Okay? This is what happens in a blizzard. A ton of snow. Okay? This poor gentleman is trying to dig his car out, which does not look like fun. Okay? Or should this poor person, I don't know if it's a male or female. Okay? So that's the end of severe weather for us. Okay? In case of a blizzard, again, you want to make sure that you have bottled water. You want to make sure you have extra blankets. You want to make sure that you have extra clothes. Okay? In case your power goes out, you want to make sure you have all these fun things. Think about what's happening in Texas right now when they lost their power, right? They're not used to cold temperatures to begin with, but then on top of that, the temperatures weren't at like 20, they were at -6. Okay? Their houses were reading at 35 degrees inside their houses, so they were freezing. The worst thing you can do in a blizzard is try to turn on your oven for heat. Okay? Because what happens if we're trying to do laundry? Because the snow could be blocking the laundry vent, you know, like the dryer vent, which then leaks carbon monoxide back into your house. Okay? So you want to be careful with all those things. All right. So what are we going to do right now? We are going to go into our review books and do practice problems on page 151, 70 to 77. Okay, I am going to stop recording this real quick.